Hey guys, Francisco here. Today's video is not easy for me to record. I'm going to show something that I'm not proud of, but I believe it needs to be shown because it shows that I'm not always dialed in. I wasn't always in shape and I struggled probably just like you. This is how I looked 3 to 4 years ago. Some of you might think, oh, that's still okay, decent shape, but you can see a big difference from this picture to this picture here. What I'm about to tell you today is basically 7 mistakes that got me in this shape. If you follow these 7 tips and correct these 7 mistakes that I was doing, you're going to feel a massive difference. You're going to save yourself a bunch of time, money, and headaches because these 7 mistakes you were probably and you are probably making. I thought I was doing everything right, but I couldn't get out of this plateau. I couldn't get the body that I wanted. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Number one mistake that I was doing is I was starting my day with carbs. Yes. And I know you're probably starting the day with carbs as well, with bread, with cookies, with pastries, with bagels, with juices. I would eat bread with butter, maybe orange juice, then maybe one egg, thinking that it was a lot of protein. So basically, I was eating carbs for breakfast and I didn't understand why I would feel lethargic 1 or 2 hours later. Why would I have an energy crash at 3 p.m.? That was the reason. That was the reason because I was eating a massive amount of carbs. Even if it wasn't massive, I was eating carbs for the first meal. That means I was sleeping like 8 hours or 7 hours or maybe 6 hours. I was fasting 10, 12 hours, and then I would eat a bunch of carbs, massive insulin spike, stop fat burning, lethargic, low energy later on, and I didn't understand what was the problem. Now, how I shifted this is I shifted my first meal from carb rich to basically no carbs or minimal carbs, high protein, moderate fat. The carbs that I have are mostly through maybe some fruits, maybe this gives me maybe 10 grams of carbs, which is basically nothing. Ideally, for fat loss, you want to be less, I would say less than 150 grams, 100 grams of carbs, depends on where you are. But if you're eating bread and bagel, like if you're eating, drinking fruit juices, or if you go to coffee shop and you order something, this gives you like 40, 50 grams of sugar, 100 grams of carbs, or 150 grams of carbs in one go. It's insane the amount of carbs there are nowadays. It's super easy to overeat carbs. When I started to study more about macronutrient timing, when I should have carbs, when I should have protein, uh, why was I getting on that plateau? What was the problem? When I started to understand hormones, then I finally understand, okay, this is probably one of the reasons I'm reaching this plateau. Carbs in the morning. Now, health, high protein, moderate fat, low carb, protein, eggs, egg whites, sardines, mackerel, chicken, steak, beef, with some avocado, maybe some pomegranates, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, a little bit of kefir, maybe a couple of nuts. I personally like Brazil nuts, macadamia nuts. Brazil nuts are great for testosterone, selenium, immune system. Everything started to change. I started to feel more energy, less cravings, and my body reacting. This was the number one mistake, which brings me to mistake number two, which is I was eating 5 meals, 6 meals a day. I would have breakfast at 8, then at 10, I would eat a snack. Then at 12, lunch. Then at 2, a snack. Then at 4, a snack. Then at 6, a snack. Then at dinner. Then maybe a snack after dinner. So no structure at all. Like the problem with this is that insulin is the number one hormone that you need to understand in order to change your body composition. And when I started to dive deep in insulin, I started to understand, okay, for me to burn fat, I need to keep my insulin levels low. So if I want to keep my insulin levels low, that means I need to eat less often. And that's when I start to understand, okay, I cannot have 6 meals a day. Let's try to reduce to 3. Because 6 meals a day, what I used to believe is, and I used to be a personal trainer. I used to tell, this is like 12 years ago, I used to tell my clients, which is, no, you need to eat 5 meals a day, 6 meals, because it spikes your metabolism. It makes you burn more fat. When you eat, you accelerate your metabolism because digestion burns calories. It's not, okay? It's not, but we are always learning. Probably some stuff, I'm not telling you that this is the absolute truth, because maybe in 5 years or 10 years, I'm going to say something different. But this is what actually made me change. I started to dive deep. I started to change my behaviors, my actions, and this is what started to change my body for good. So I'm telling you mistakes that I corrected and worked for me. And that's the number one thing, which is understanding meal timing. No 6 meals, 2 or 3 meals, ideally 3 meals. For example, I eat when I go out on holidays, I have a massive breakfast, then I don't eat for like 8 hours until dinner. But usually I have a good high protein breakfast, like with 50 grams of protein, let's say 800 calories. Then if I eat my breakfast at 9, I eat my second meal at 1 p.m. and then I eat the third meal at 7 p.m. 3 meals, 50, 60 grams of protein each one, easily 180, 190 grams of protein. I aim for 200 grams, but that's easily, I mean, if you eat one steak, 200 grams of steak with 2 eggs or 3 or 4 eggs, you get 100 grams of protein easily. It's easy to get protein as long as you know where to get it. But for the sake of this video, we're talking about meal timing. The reason you're not burning fat and reaching a plateau is because your insulin levels are always high. So that's what I did. I wanted to burn more fat. I wanted my insulin levels to be lower. So I started to eat less often, but with more quality, which brings me to point number 3. I didn't care about sleep. I mean, I knew that sleep was important because you grow when you're sleeping, but I didn't fully understand sleep. And hopefully, if you're listening to me and watching this channel, you understand the importance of sleep, or you will understand a bit more the importance of sleep. And I start to understand. I was sleeping maybe 6 hours, 6 hours and a half. If I had a night with 5 hours or 5 hours and a half, I would go to the gym, do cardio, lift weight, and then my body wouldn't change. Pushing harder, feeling great, like sweating. And then my body would simply not react until I started to dive deep in the science of sleep. And I started to see, okay, this is probably because I'm not sleeping enough. You have basically a light sleep, and then you have REM sleep, and you have deep sleep. REM and deep sleep are restorative sleep. And I started to understand, okay, how can I maximize REM sleep and deep sleep? REM sleep basically is cognitive processing. Deep sleep, more about physical restoration, where you have more growth hormone, more testosterone. So I started to understand, okay, growth testosterone are released during deep sleep. So how can I maximize my deep sleep? And I started to understand the behaviors that I need in order to maximize that. That's something that I see, which is people don't care about sleep. They care about supplements, training, brutal HIIT classes, diets, but sleep continues to be neglected. And it's definitely the number one thing that is more important. And my body started to change. I started to get leaner. I started to be mentally sharper, physically sharper, stronger, feeling better. Simply when I started to nail my sleep, personally use Whoop now. It's been almost 3 years and I love it. It helps me stay accountable. It helps me go to bed on time, understand sleep behaviors. For example, one day if I eat later, what's the behavior on REM sleep, on deep sleep? If I work out later, or if I get morning sunlight, like all the behaviors that I have on a daily basis impact my performance. This helps me stay accountable and understand, okay, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done that. So that's something that I would advise you to get. It doesn't need to be Whoop, can be any other device that you prefer to use in order to track. But what gets tracked gets managed. You don't need to be obsessed with tracking, but this thing definitely helped me stay accountable and improve my sleep. And that's when I start to actually understand sleep behaviors and change my body composition, which brings me here to mistake number 4, which is I was training 5-6 days a week, splits. One day, chest and biceps, then back and biceps, then legs, then shoulders, then abs, then cardio, then HIIT, 6-7 days a week, sleeping 6 hours, bunch of carbs, 6 meals a day. I would love it. I was like, man, why don't I see my body changing? Why do I still have this lower belly? I'm still not feeling myself. I would see guys in shape. I was like, how can I get to that shape? I always have this mental image, this, let's call it a vision board. The body that I have today, the shape that I am, it was my ideal a couple of years ago. Like, it was my ideal. And fortunately, I found a good system to get me in the shape that I dreamt of before. And that was a problem. I was training 5-6 days a week, not caring about sleep, eating all over the place, a bunch of carbs. Then the problem with overtraining is that I was overtraining 60, 75, 90-minute workouts, like insane. Like, and then I would be super hungry because that would release more cortisol. I would have cravings, eat a lot, then being super full. Then the next day I would work out again. So I was kind of bulky, but I wasn't feeling good and I would feel leaner. I didn't see the definition that I want. That's the problem. I was focusing too much on the gym, training 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and I wasn't focused on what I was doing outside the gym, which is NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, more movement, more walks, basically everything I do outside the gym. I was focusing too much on the gym and not on what I do outside the gym. And nowadays, how I fix that is simply train less in a smarter way. So I'm not training brutal workouts 6 days a week. I train 3 to 4 days a week. If I train 3 days, I do 3 full body workouts, 50 minutes. If I train 4 days a week, which is currently what I'm doing, I do one day upper body, the other day lower body. Then I rest like 1 or 2 days. These rest days, I get steps. Okay, that's the key takeaway. So I don't just lift weights and then I don't do anything. I lift weights one day, 45, 50 minutes, a good session upper body, the other day lower body. Then the other day I rest. I just walk. Maybe I go to the beach, I walk 40, 45 minutes to get more steps, by 10,000 steps, 12,000 steps, get sunlight, focus more on recovery and what I do outside the gym, such as lifestyle factors, sunlight, meditation, managing cortisol. Super important what you do outside the gym. So please don't neglect the NEAT, which is the activity outside the gym. Standing, walking, meetings, being on the go and trying to move as much as you can throughout the day is your biggest lever for fat loss. Way more important than the workouts that you're doing. Workouts are important, but what you do outside the gym is even more important, which brings me here to my next point, which is running on stress all day. I was stressed, because I had a lot of things like family stuff and business and sessions and financial responsibility, a lot of things going on. And I did understand that your body only recognizes one stress. If you're stressed because you're going to have a presentation, or because you're going to have an important meeting, or because you're going to have a workout, or because you have lack of sleep, is the same stress. You just perceive it in a different way. You release cortisol. That's it. If you're stressed, you release cortisol. If you're constantly working out, doing HIIT classes or cardio, brutal workouts, not sleeping, you release stress. You release cortisol, high stress. If you're stressed because you have financial problems, relationship problems, you release stress. So you need to understand, if you have lifestyle stress and you're putting workout stress, it's way too much cortisol that will stop you from burning fat. It will make you accumulate more fat, especially around the belly. It will make you decrease your testosterone levels, because every time you increase your cortisol, you decrease your testosterone. And I didn't understand this. So that's why it's important, especially for men over 35, 40. You don't need to train 6 or 7 days a week because you have a lot of stuff going on in your life. Probably when you were 20, you didn't have as many responsibilities as you have right now. With more responsibilities comes more stress. You need to train less, but in a smarter way. You can get in great shape if you understand what you should be doing, training in a smarter way with a smarter system, and understand not just workouts, but lifestyle factors, nutrition, and all these things that will be way more important than just going all in with the workouts. Because I deal with a lot of high performers, guys over 35, 45, 55, like CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, and they're training sometimes 7 days a week, overachievers, and they sleep 6 hours, and they don't understand why they cannot get rid of the gut. That's exactly the reason. So understand stress, manage it accordingly, train a little bit less in a smarter way, focus on lifestyle factors, understand cortisol, learn how to decrease it, and you're going to see your body changing just like I did. Which brings me here to point number 6, which is eating late at night. I used to do this. I would eat before bed. Like I would have a massive snack, like oats and milk and maybe cookies and protein bars. This is ridiculous. I used to wake up at 2 or 3 a.m., go to the toilet, and then I was hungry. I would eat a protein bar at 3 a.m. And I think that would be better for my metabolism, because I would have protein in my system. If I don't have the snack in the middle of the night, I'm going to lose muscle. And that the protein bar, having a protein snack in the middle of the night, would fuel my body like insane. Okay. And I didn't understand why I was not burning fat, because I was snacking all the time. I was overeating, putting crap in my body, and I was bloated. I wasn't burning fat. That was reflecting in my skin, body composition, in how I felt. This changed for me when I started to not eat the last 2 hours of the day, ideally 3. Before I would eat 5 minutes before bed and in the middle of the night. Now I try not to eat 3 hours before bed. I keep this as a non-negotiable. 3 hours, non-negotiable. I'm not going to say non-negotiable. 3 hours is in a good day. Non-negotiable is 2 hours. So if I go to bed 9:30, I try not to eat after 7:30. If I go to bed at 10, at 8, I try not to eat. So 2 hours, this enhances my deep sleep, promotes digestion, so you decrease your glucose levels, facilitates gastric emptying as well. So it will help massively with your sleep, especially as I get older. I notice that if I eat late, my sleep is not the same. That's why at least 2 hours before bed, no sleep. And this is something that I did that definitely changed the game for me. Which brings me here to the last point, which is I didn't understand hormones. And when I started to dive deep in hormones such as insulin, cortisol, and testosterone, I started to understand what I need to do in order to change my body And that's when things change. It's not when I started to understand the training protocols and the best training split. It's when I started to understand hormones, testosterone, cortisol, insulin. If you learn how to understand testosterone, cortisol, and insulin, your body will transform. Not just for body composition, to lose fat and build muscle, but for longevity, like for insulin sensitivity, for libido, for energy, for better sleep, for prevention of heart attack, prevent fatty liver, prevent all these metabolic diseases that are killing us nowadays. You need to understand these hormones. You want your insulin levels to be low, you want your testosterone levels to be high, and you want your cortisol levels to be low. If you learn how to manage these properly, and we're not going to talk in detail about each one, but if you learn how to manage these three hormones, you're going to be dialed in just like I did with myself when I started to understand how can I keep my insulin levels low, how can I boost my testosterone levels naturally, how can I keep my cortisol levels down with a minimal effective dose approach in terms of training, with the right type of supplements, the right type of training, the lifestyle, the sleep. Everything started to fall in place and my body simply started to transform. I was running a lot. I love running. I would go to the promenade. I would run 7, 8 kilometers, 9, 10 kilometers. I would feel tired, exhausted, a lot of endorphins because it's great. You're going to feel great. But my body wouldn't change. I would feel sore, like my glutes would be sore, my quads. But I didn't see it. The next day I would feel, I would feel flat. The stomach, I would feel flat. And this is probably something that you feel as well. You train, you do cardio, elliptical, you run a lot, but you still feel flat. That's probably the reason, because you're overtraining the wrong type of training. There is nothing wrong with cardio. I like running. If you love running, keep doing it. Just understand, if you're running 7 days a week, you're not going to have a lean and defined body with good structure, with good testosterone, because inevitably excessive cardio will compromise your cortisol levels. You need to understand the minimal effective dose. What's the minimum that you can do to get the maximum results? Ideally, train 3 strength training sessions per week or 4, 1 or 2 cardio sessions, run once or twice a week. Prioritize zone 2 cardio. That's when I started to see my body changing. I started to do less cardio, so less running, more walking incline, zone 2, keeping my heart rate between 120 and 30 in the fat burning zone, because it minimizes impact, doesn't impact cortisol, and keeps my testosterone levels high. And that's when everything started to change for me, when I started to run less, walk more, and understand the impact of recovery. And that's it, guys. The 7 mistakes that I was committing that kept me stuck that you can correct and learn from me, because this video can save you years. Correct the 7 plus the bonus one that I told you. And in case you want to know more about cortisol, which is something that I get asked a lot, and it's something that mostly everyone is stressed. Mostly, I think everyone has high cortisol. So it's crucial for you to understand cortisol if you want to understand more about it and how you can manage that and finally get rid of belly fat and decrease your cortisol levels. I strongly advise you that you check this video here, where I go deep in cortisol, how to decrease cortisol, how to manage cortisol, and you're going to understand everything that you need about it. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know in the comments if you're guilty of one of these mistakes, and I'll be more than happy to help you. I'll see you on the next one. Ciao, ciao.